He said, "Just stay home tonight. It's nothing special." The words echoed in my mind long after the call ended, sharp and simple, like a door quietly closing. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in hand, staring at the screen as if it might light up with a message that would change everything. But it didn't. Instead, the silence pressed in, heavy and unfamiliar, making the apartment feel smaller than ever. I tried to convince myself it was fine. Maybe he needed space. Maybe his family wanted a quiet evening. But the longer I sat there, the more the questions grew. Why did his voice sound so distant? Why did he hesitate before hanging up? I scrolled through old messages, looking for reassurance. In the ordinary, but every word now felt loaded, every emoji a puzzle. Dinner time came and went. I made toast, barely tasted it, and left the plate untouched on the counter. The apartment felt hollow, as if it were waiting for something to happen. I paced from room to room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, the tick of the clock. Each noise seemed to underline my absence from wherever he was. I checked his social media, searching for clues. Nothing new. No photos, no tags, no hints. But the silence only made my thoughts louder. What if he didn't want me there? What if I was an afterthought, someone to be included only when convenient? The idea stung, sharp and cold, and I found myself standing by the door, keys in hand, before I'd really decided to leave. The drive across town was automatic. I barely registered the lights, the turns, the familiar streets. My mind replayed his words, over and over, each time with a new edge. Stay home tonight. Was it a request or a warning? Was I about to cross a line I couldn't uncross? When I pulled up outside his parents' house, I hesitated. The windows glowed with warm light. Laughter drifted through the glass, muffled but unmistakable. I sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding in my chest. I told myself I could just drive away, pretend I'd never come. But curiosity and something deeper hurt. Maybe pushed me out of the car and up the walkway. I paused at the door, listening. Voices overlapped, plates clinked, someone told a joke and everyone laughed. My name wasn't mentioned. I knocked softly at first, then harder. The laughter faded, footsteps approached. The door opened, and his mother's face appeared, surprised, but not unkind. "Oh, hi. We didn't know you were coming," she said, stepping aside. I stepped inside. The dining room was full. Every chair was taken. He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth, eyes wide with something I couldn't read. His family turned, polite smiles, freezing as they realized I wasn't expected. I stood in the doorway, the smell of food and the warmth of the room pressing in around me. No one spoke for a moment. Then his father cleared his throat and gestured to an empty seat at the far end of the table. "Would you like to join us?" he asked, voice careful. I nodded, but the words caught in my throat. I walked to the chair, feeling every eye on me, every heartbeat loud in my ears. I sat down, hands in my lap, and looked at him. He looked away. The meal continued, conversation resuming in fits and starts, but I barely heard any of it. I watched him laugh at a story his brother told, watched his mother pass the bread, watched the way everyone seemed to fit together effortlessly, while I sat at the edge, an afterthought. I tried to smile, tried to join in, but the feeling of being outside looking in only grew stronger. When dessert was served, I realized I hadn't spoken more than a handful of words. No one seemed to notice. The evening wound down, plates were cleared, and people began to stand and stretch, ready to go home. He still hadn't looked at me. As I stood to leave, his mother pressed a container of leftovers into my hands. "Take this," she said, smiling. "You shouldn't go home hungry." I thanked her, voice barely above a whisper, and walked out. Into the night, the container warm in my hands. The door closed behind me, and I was alone again, the weight of everything unsaid settling over me like a second skin. Driving home, I replayed every moment, searching for answers. But all I had were questions, and the echo of his words, "Stay home tonight," ringing louder than ever. The next morning, the apartment felt even emptier, as if my absence the night before had left a mark. I stared at the container of leftovers on the kitchen counter, untouched, its presence a reminder of everything I hadn't said. I tried to focus on my routine coffee, shower, emails, but my mind kept drifting back to the dinner table, to his face when he saw me, to the way he looked away. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that I had overreacted, that There was some reasonable explanation, but the silence between us was different now. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, and every hour that passed made the distance feel wider. I scrolled through our old photos, searching for signs of cracks I'd missed, moments when I should have noticed things changing. Every smile, every embrace, now felt like a memory from another life. By midday, I couldn't stand the quiet any longer. I called him, heart pounding as the phone rang. He answered on the third ring, his voice flat, guarded. Hey. I tried to keep my tone light. Hey, can we talk? There was a pause. I'm busy right now. Can we do this later? Something in his voice made me hesitate, but I pushed forward. I want to understand what happened last night. Why didn't you want me there? He sighed, the sound heavy. It wasn't about you. My family just needed some time together. It's complicated. Complicated. The word hung between us, thick and impenetrable. I felt really out of place. I said quietly, I just want to know if I did something wrong. There was another pause, longer this time. No, you didn't do anything wrong. I needed space. My family needed space. That's all. I wanted to believe him, but the ache in my chest told me it wasn't that simple. Okay, I said, though nothing felt okay. Let me know when you want to talk. He murmured something I couldn't quite catch and hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling more alone than before. The day dragged on. I tried to distract myself with work, with errands, with anything that might dull the ache. But everywhere I went, I saw reminders: couples laughing in the park, families gathered in cafes, people moving through their lives as if belonging was the most natural thing in the world. I wondered when it had started to feel unnatural for me. By evening, I was restless. I walked through the city, letting the noise and movement wash over me. I replayed the dinner in my mind, every awkward glance, every unfinished sentence. Was it something I'd said at a previous gathering? Had I missed some unspoken rule? The questions circled, relentless. I stopped at a bench and sat, watching strangers pass by. I thought about calling a friend, but the words felt too heavy, too tangled to explain. Instead, I sat in silence, trying to make sense of my place in his life, in anyone's life. When I finally returned home, the apartment felt colder. I reheated the leftovers, eating slowly, more out of obligation than hunger. Each bite tasted like the night before, familiar, but distant, as if I were eating someone else's meal. Before bed, I scrolled through my messages again, hoping for something from him. Nothing. The silence was its own answer. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it would take for things to feel normal again, or if they ever would. As sleep finally crept in, I made a promise to myself. Tomorrow, I would stop waiting for explanations. If I wanted answers, I would have to find them on my own. The next day, I woke up with a resolve that felt unfamiliar but necessary. I couldn't keep circling the same questions, waiting for someone else to offer clarity. If I wanted to understand where I stood, I would have to face the discomfort head on. I dressed quickly, barely tasting breakfast, and left the apartment with a plan forming in my mind. At work, my concentration wavered. Each email, each meeting, felt like background noise to the persistent uncertainty gnawing at me. I rehearsed what I might say to him, how I would ask for honesty without sounding desperate. I wondered if he would even agree to meet, or if he'd keep pushing me away with vague reassurances. By mid-afternoon, I sent him a message. Can we talk tonight? I need to understand. I watched the screen, waiting for the 3 dots to appear, for any sign he was willing to meet me halfway. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, his reply came. Okay. After dinner. The hours crawled by. I replayed every possible scenario in my mind, from reconciliation to finality. I tried to prepare myself for each one, but the truth was, I had no idea what I wanted to hear. I only knew I couldn't keep living in limbo. When evening came, I walked to the cafe we used to visit together. The air inside was warm, filled with the low hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes. I chose a table by the window, hands trembling slightly as I waited. He arrived a few minutes later, looking tired, his eyes shadowed by something I couldn't name. He sat down across from me, avoiding my gaze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, thick with everything we hadn't said. I broke it first. I need you to be honest with me. Why did you ask me to stay home? Why did you act like I didn't belong? He looked down, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. It wasn't supposed to be like that. My family, they've been going through things. I thought it would be easier if you weren't there. I tried to keep my voice steady. Easier for who? For you? For them? He winced. For everyone. I guess. I didn't want to put you in the middle of it. I shook my head. You didn't put me in the middle. You left me out. You made me feel like I was invisible. He looked up then, guilt flickering in his eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would hurt you like this. I swallowed, feeling the sting of tears. I refused to let fall. You didn't think, or you didn't care. He hesitated, searching for words. I care. I didn't know how to handle it. My parents have been fighting. My brothers. Moving out. Everything's tense. I thought keeping you away would protect you. I let out a shaky breath. I don't need protection. I need honesty. I need to feel like I'm part of your life, not just someone you bring in when it's convenient. He nodded, silent. The weight of his choices settled between us, heavy and undeniable. We sat there, the noise of the calf rising and falling around us. For the first time, I saw him not as the person I wanted him to be, but as someone struggling, flawed, uncertain. It didn't erase the hurt, but it made it easier to breathe. After a while, he spoke again, voice softer. I'm sorry. I know. I messed up. I don't want to lose you. I looked at him, searching for sincerity. Then you have to let me in, even when things are hard. Especially then. He nodded, and for the first time in days, I felt a sliver of hope. Not because everything was fixed, but because we were finally speaking the truth. We left the calf together, walking side by side in silence. The city lights blurred around us, and I realized that belonging wasn't something handed to me. It was something I had to claim for myself, even when it meant risking pain. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed our conversation. The ache was still there, but so was a quiet strength. I had asked for what I needed. I had faced the truth even when it hurt, and that, I realized, was the beginning of something new. The days that followed were marked by a strange quiet, as if both of us were holding our breath, unsure of what would come next. Our conversation at the calf had stripped away the surface, leaving only raw honesty and the uncertain ground beneath it. I felt lighter for having spoken the truth, but the ache of exclusion lingered, a dull reminder that trust, once shaken, is slow to rebuild. He called the next evening, his voice hesitant but open. My family's having dinner again tomorrow. I want you to come. I want them to see you're part of my life. The invitation was simple, but it carried the weight of everything we'd left unsaid. I agreed, knowing this was a test not just for him, but for me as well. The next day, I stood outside his parents' house, heart pounding, palms damp. The memory of that first dinner, my arrival unannounced, the shock on their faces, the way I'd felt invisible hovered at the edge of my thoughts. But I forced myself to step forward, to ring the bell, to face whatever waited on the other side. He opened the door, a nervous smile on his lips. You came, he said, relief flickering in his eyes. I nodded, stepping inside, determined not to shrink from the discomfort. The house felt different this time, tense, yes, but also expectant, as if everyone sensed the possibility of change. His mother greeted me with a hug, awkward but genuine. His father offered a handshake, his grip firm, his eyes searching. His brother barely looked up, lost in his own world. We sat around the table, the silence thick at first, broken only by the clatter of dishes and the scrape of chairs. I tried to join the conversation, to find my place among them. There were awkward pauses, moments where my words seemed to fall flat, but I kept speaking, refusing to let the silence swallow me. I asked about his mother's work, about his father's garden, about his brother's new apartment. Gradually, the tension eased, replaced by tentative smiles and cautious laughter. He watched me, pride and gratitude mingling in his gaze. I realized then that this was what belonging looked like, not effortless, but earned, built moment by moment, through presence and persistence. Halfway through the meal, his mother turned to me, her voice gentle. We're glad you're here. Last time was unexpected, but you're always welcome. The words caught me off guard, a quiet acknowledgement of the pain I'd felt, and an invitation to begin again. I thanked her, my voice steady, and felt something inside me loosen. The ache of exclusion faded, replaced by a fragile hope. I wasn't just a guest, I was becoming part of their story, and they were becoming part of mine. After dinner, he pulled me aside, his expression serious. I know I hurt you. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I want to do better. I want us to be honest, even when it's hard. I looked at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the sincerity in his words. I want that too, I said, but it has to go both ways. I can't keep guessing where I stand. He nodded, taking my hand in his. No more guessing. From now on, we face things together. As we stood there, I realized that growth doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from moving through it together, with open eyes and open hearts. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was ours to shape. That night, as I left his family's home, I felt different, stronger, more certain. I had faced the fear of being left out, and in doing so, found a place for myself not just at their table, but in my own life. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, I believed it was worth continuing. The days after that dinner moved forward with a new rhythm, tentative, but real. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight in my chest begin to shift. The air between us was clearer, the silence no longer a wall but a space where words could land and be heard. We spoke honestly, sometimes awkwardly, about what had happened and what it meant to move forward. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping apologies, just the simple, steady work of rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. He started sharing more about his family's struggles, the arguments that had pulled everyone tight and silent, the fear that letting me in would mean exposing the mess he'd tried to hide. I listened, not to judge but to understand, and in that listening I found my own voice again. I told him how it felt to stand in that doorway, to see everyone together, and know I was not included. I told him about the ache of waiting for an explanation that never came, about the way loneliness can make even the most familiar places feel foreign. He didn't try to fix it or explain it away. He just listened, and that was enough. We started making new memories, small things, a walk through the city, a quiet dinner at home, a shared joke that made us both laugh until the tension broke. His family, too, began to shift. His mother called to invite me over for lunch. His father asked about my work. His brother texted a photo of his new apartment with a caption that made me smile. The awkwardness faded, replaced by a tentative acceptance. I realized that belonging isn't granted all at once. It's built slowly, through patience and persistence. One evening, as we cleared the table after dinner, he turned to me and said, "I know I can't erase what happened, but I want you to know, you matter here. You matter to me." The words were simple, but their sincerity cut through the last of my doubt. I looked at him and saw not just the person I loved, but someone willing to grow, to stumble, to try again. I thought about that first night, the sting of exclusion, the cold walk back to my car. I thought about how easy it would have been to let that pain define everything that came after, but I hadn't. I had chosen to ask questions, to face the discomfort, to demand honesty not just from him, but from myself. In doing so, I discovered a strength I hadn't known I possessed. The story didn't end with a perfect resolution or a sudden transformation. There were still moments of uncertainty, still days when old doubts crept in, but there was also a new foundation, built on truth and the willingness to keep showing up, even when it was hard. I learned that love isn't about being included in every moment, but about being seen and valued for who you are, even when things are messy. As I stood by the window that night, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. I wasn't the same person who had waited by the phone, hoping for an invitation that never came. I was someone who had walked into the unknown, faced rejection, and found her place not because it was given, but because she claimed it. The journey wasn't about being welcomed at every table, but about finding the courage to pull up a chair and say, "I belong here," and in that simple act, everything changed.